Hello and welcome to Doubles and Trebles. We should be live on this Wednesday evening at 9:30. We've got Matt Pieman Hill back for the second night running. God knows how he's managed it. And we've got Ozzy Smith as well. And myself, we're here to talk about the Grand Slam. Starts on Saturday. We gave you a little bit of a teaser video yesterday talking about the qualification, the runners and riders. But we're not messing about tonight. We're straight in. We're going to probably comment on every player. There's 32 players lining up. There's 8 groups of 4. Pretty much like a World Cup where the first 2 in each group are going to go through following a round robin. So there's 8 players are ranked, and so there's a ranked player in each of the 8 groups. And Group A, the ranked player, as you would expect, is world number 1 and reigning world champion Gerwyn Price. He's 4-7 to win Group A and progress into the knockout stages. This is to win the group, although there is 2 qualifiers from each group. Krzysztof Ratajski is 9-4, second favourite to win this group, and then you've got Martin Schindler at 10-1. And the pretty unknown UK Development Tour winner of 2021, Nathan Rafferty, is 33-1 to cause a mega upset and win this group. I'm going to go to you first, Pieman. What's your thoughts on Group A, where Gerwyn Price and Ratajski look to be the dominant 2?
Yeah, cheers, Adam. Good to be here and good to have Ozzy back on the channel after a long absence. So, yeah, it's great times.
Nearly
really.
as long as yours, yeah.
Yeah, and sorry about running slightly late tonight. Just housework getting in the way of that. You know how it is. It's a tough old life. We'll dive in with Group A, as you quite rightly say. Gerwyn Price. Look, this is one of the more straightforward groups for me. We'll just run through the players. Gerwyn Price, as you say, the world champ. He's kind of picking and choosing his events at the moment. Missed a lot of the Pro Tours, but we do see him at the televised events. He's in great nick. His average over the last 3 months is around a ton. So there's absolutely nothing to worry about in terms of form. The worry I would have for him down the line is that he looks to have a last 16 or a quarter-final match with Jonny Clayton, but I don't really see any issues for him in the group. I expect him to win this group, and he's quite strongly odds on to do so. I think Krzysztof Ratajski will probably join him in the knockout stages. The Polish Eagle been plodding away for this season, some very decent results on the TV. And it does feel like a matter of time before he goes through and at least makes a final, maybe wins something. He certainly got the game to, was in the scrappy semi-final at the World Series of Darts with Dimitri Vandenberg. That was a great chance for him to win the final, but couldn't quite get over the line there. He's a great clutch doubler, pastes the trebles in. So there's a lot to like about Krzysztof, and he kind of plays the board as well. So I'm sure he'll fancy turning Gerwyn Price over. Whether he will or not so sure. Think he's probably likely to finish second. The man that I think can trouble him for second possibly is Martin Schindler. A big favourite of ours on the Pro Tour. He always outruns his odds. Always gets put in at ludicrous 3-figure prices. And while he hasn't managed to win or get to a final, he's been certainly knocking around in the later stages of a few of these Pro Tour events, and he's a very likeable player. I mean, anyone that can hit 9 darters and has multiple 9 darters to their name on floor events is obviously a very, very good player. I just worry about him a little bit on the TV, whether he's got the bottle to go and win a match in front of a big crowd against a Ratajski or a Price, but he's certainly got the game to do so. I think his game against Krzysztof is probably going to be pivotal to his chances. And then we have Nathan Rafferty, Northern Irishman. He's coming to the boil on the development tour this year, and we're going to see a lot more of him. Only 21, he burst onto the scene as an 18-year-old when he beat James Wade in the UK Open, and also knocked out Peter Wright 10-9 in a fantastic match before going out in the last 32. Had a little bit of time away since then, been playing on the minor tours, but he's a fantastic player, but when he's played in Players' Championships event, he still looks like he's got a little bit of development to do. This is by far and away his biggest ever tournament, and it would be a massive surprise if he was to get through. So for me, it's most likely Price first, Ratajski second, and Schindler a danger man. Don't know if you guys have got anything to add to that.
Well, before we go to Ozzy, Price is the 7-2 joint favourite outright to win the whole thing alongside Van Gerwen, as you would expect, and Ratajski is in the region of 28-1. We mentioned yesterday, Pieman, about the qualification process for this tournament. I had a look through today. 8 of the top 25 unofficial PDC rankings are not in this tournament, which is pretty mad when you think about it. But we can moan all we want. Aussie Group A, before we move on to Group B, any quick thoughts on Group A?
Nothing really. Not much to add. I think Price and Ratajski pretty solid, selections to qualify. Gerwyn, Price. I know Pieman said, there might be a concern that he could have a quarter-final tie with Jonny Clayton, but let's have it right. Gerwyn, Price should have knocked Jonny Clayton out the last televised tournament, and it was just a complete blow-up from Price, and Clayton finally found his form. That basically meant he didn't knock Price out. Ratajski is, it's just your typical steady Eddie. Always there and thereabouts. Certainly picked up, you see him more appearing now. I think he's appeared in a couple of televised quarterfinals this year from memory. So, he's there. Schindler, the obvious danger man. But again, big Price. May upset one of them. But I think the way we see Schindler qualify, I think he needs to beat one of Price and Ratajski, and he may run them close, but I don't think he beats either of them.
Yeah, and just as a reminder, in the group stages, the round robin, so each player will play 3 games, and it's the best of, I think it's the first to 6 legs, so just like it would be on the Players' Championship. On to Group B, so the winner of Group A will play the second in Group B, and so on. Like I say, again, similar to the World Cup of Football. Ozzy, I'm going to come to you first. We've got Clayton at 8-15, so he's just a shorter price than Gerwyn Price to actually win his group. Then we've got Pieman's favourite, Mervyn King, in there at 3-1, followed by, in my opinion, 2 guys that are going to struggle to pick up any wins, except for the ones against each other. Rusty Jake Rodriguez, 20-year-old, who's won the European Development Tour this year, and Bradley Brooks, the World Youth Champion, who I think finished second in the UK Development Tour behind the aforementioned Nathan Rafferty. So, Aussie Group B, is it another one? Is it another case of being pretty straightforward?
On paper, it should be. And I'd be very surprised if Brooks or Rodriguez caused any sort of upset. We've just mentioned about Jonny Clayton then. He is in the form of his life. And I think, he's coming in at rank number 8 there, and that is a false ranking. He is not the 8th best player in the world at the moment. You can argue he's probably top 2 in terms of players. And so I think he'll absolutely, stroll through the groups. And Mervyn King, again, Mervyn is arguably, in somewhat, I said the form of his life, but as good as, he put in 2 tremendous performances in the last televised tournament. Wasn't great in the recent Super Series. That's not saying. I think Merv was, criticising the schedule, actually, that how busy it's been, and for him it's just exhausting. But big TV event, it's certainly gonna, it's gonna get Merv going, and I think he'll have no problems whatsoever. I actually think if King turns up, there's a chance he could turn Clayton over. It wouldn't be a massive shock. We've seen, the darts King's produced recently, that when he's on form, he's up there with the very best. But the smart bet is, a Clayton group win with King coming in second. Bradley Brooks, ever improving. And to be fair to Rusty Jake Rodriguez, he is coming into the tournament on the back of some form. He's just won, the European Development Tour. So you've got to be throwing well to do that. That's not just an accident, where you can... Well, if it is an accident, it's an almighty one. So he's coming into the tournament on some form, but this is a completely different ball game, and coming up against the likes of Clayton, King, it's a different gravy to what he would have been throwing at against last weekend. But, I think his game, the winnable game, is probably Bradley Brooks. The other 2, I don't give him a chance whatsoever.
Just on Rusty Jake, he's 11-1, and yes, he had to win this group. And he has won the European Development Tour this year, but that's been heavily COVID impacted. There's been hardly any actual European Tour events at the top level, never mind the development level. COVID impacted, certainly easier than the UK equivalent, and I don't see why Rusty Jake is 11-1 and Bradley Brooks is 20-1, but that might be by the by anyway, because neither of them are winning this group. Pieman, before we move on to Group C, anything on Group B?
Yeah, I think Rusty Jake Rodriguez might qualify, actually. Just to contrast everything that's just been said. Not like me to be contrarian, of course, but look, he's got a very tough group here. Jonny Clayton, I think, is an absolute cast iron certainty to qualify the way he's playing. Nothing phases him. He's in the form of his life, and I expect that to continue here. these first of 5 leg games are banana skins, no doubt about that. I think, if there's a player who has a sniff, that sniff is significantly bigger when it's first to 5 rather than first to 10 or whatever. So in the knockout stages, I think the cream will rise to the top. But I expect a few slip-ups in the group. If you look back in previous years at groups, we have some really funny players getting through the groups. I remember Adam Hunt sneaking through in second last year at the expense of a couple of very high-profile players due to leg difference and all kinds of carry-ons. So, as I say, it can't be with any confidence. But Merv obviously is Merv, and I think he's fantastic, and I hope he gets through comfortably winning the group. But his form's definitely improved in the last couple of months. I think he's peaking at the right time. I just wonder about his enthusiasm for this event. Ozzy said it. He says that he finds long events draining, fatiguing. He is getting on, and maybe, as much as he wants to perform in these big ones, maybe he's already got one eye on the World Championships. I don't know. Look, I think he could get out of this group. For a bit of context, Clayton's average since September is around the 97 mark. Merv King's is around the 93. And Rusty Jet Rodriguez, 91. So there's not a massive gap there. Bradley Brooks down in the mid-80s. That may be why we've got the price differential. Brooks certainly has the sexier profile, I would say, with his World Youth background. But Rusty Jake, these aren't mugs that he's doing in on this European Development Tour. We've got Neil Zonneveld on there. Nico Kurz, very capable German, is on there. The young 16-year-old lad, the German, that's just qualified for the World Championships, also operating on there. Kevin Doetz, who's a regular who we see in Players' Championships. So he's stuffing them. He really is. And yes, it is COVID reduced. Yes, it's a pinch of salt. But I think Rusty Jake's a better player than his brother. I expect him to beat Bradley Brooks. And I think, as much as I hate to say it, he might give Merv a bit of a scare. But yeah, let's see. I think Jonny Clayton wins the group.
Yeah, Jonny Clayton is best price 11-2, third favourite. So that is a shift in terms of what the markets would have looked like, say, a year ago, where Peter Wright had the third position behind the big two pretty much nailed. That's all changed now. And Jonny Clayton's 11-2. Mervyn King's 40-1. And our man Rusty is 300-1. So that price will plummet if he was to make the knockout stages. On to Group C. This is the bet of the first round for me. Rob Cross 11-10 to win this group. The 2018 world champion has never quite reached that peak form since, but he's come pretty close in recent months. The winner of the European Championship in October, where he beat Van Gerwen in the final, battered the likes of Joe Cullen and Jose en route to the final. Quickly followed up with a Players' Championship win a matter of days later, his first in some time on the floor. One of only 2 non-seeded players to be favourite to win their group. The seed in this group is James Wade, who's 7-4 to win the group. He won the UK Open in March. Hasn't done a lot since at all, really. Currently sits 4th in the order of merit on the official rankings, just ahead of a cluster of players on 300,000 points plus. That could well look pretty different by the end of the year. Jim Williams is 10-1 and Boris Kirchman's 12-1. Boris came through on the final day qualifier, one of 8 players to sneak in. He's pulled up no trees whatsoever this year, and he was quite lucky to qualify at the expense of the likes of Rids and Doby. And Jim Williams has appeared twice in the Grand Slam via his former association with the BDO. He's won the UK Challenge Tour this year, but has done very, very little in any PDC ranking events he has turned up in. There is actually only 2 players in the whole of the PDC rankings that sit behind Jim Williams on ranking points. So Rob Cross for me, strong fancy. Back to you, Pieman.
Yeah, totally echo what you're saying here. I think Rob Cross 11-10 to win this group's an absolute steal. Should be odds on. James Wade looked quite badly out of form in recent times. I know he doesn't care as much about these floor events as he maybe does the TV events, but still it would be nice to see some kind of form from him. And 2 first-round exits in 3 of the days in the most recent Players' Championship and a quarter-final. But I'm not convinced by that quarter-final form, to be honest. He had a very kind draw, and then he was dumped out in the quarters by Darius Labanauskas, who, I love Darius, but, if you're serious in good nick, then you should be putting away Darius Labanauskas, really. So I think big question marks over Wade's form. He's quite prone to a first-round exit when he's not feeling it. Should be said that he was a finalist last year here against Jose de Sousa, but I think he was in a very different headspace to what he maybe is now. And while he can rise to the occasion, I think Rob Cross should be favourite here, just for all the reasons that you just listed, really. Fantastic form. A massive, massive win for him at the European Championship to go in and win a televised event with a full-strength field, because he has not done that for a long, long time. It's a former world champion that we're talking about, and he won't lack confidence or belief that he can beat the best. He was fantastic in the recent Players' Championships, multiple ton-plus averages. And I think if you were picking between him and Wade, there would only be one choice at the moment. And I do like to have a look at the outsiders, but I can't get mad about Boris Kirchner or Jim Williams. Kirchner, we have seen him a couple of times do some damage on TV events, but it's few and far between. And generally, he's out in the first or second round of the Players' Championship events, generally speaking. And Jim Williams, nice to see Jim on a Sky Sports event doing well. Obviously, a bit of a BDO stalwart and a very solid, handy player on his day, but he's got his work cut out here. I think Rob Cross should win this group with 3 wins out of 3.
Ozzy, can you make an argument for any of the outsiders?
Absolutely not, mate. No. But Barney's right, and as are you as well. When I was going through the prices before, I saw Rob Cross over evens, and I thought it's an excellent bet. And Cross is probably in the best form of his career pre-winning the World Championship. He's throwing consistently well, as Pieman said, putting in big averages. And it's not just once in a blue moon, like Wade has shown. He got to that quarter-final. Cross is now throwing consistently. Seems happy. He looks a lot fitter, than he was. And there's always a concern about the darters that dropped the weight, but it seemed to have actually benefited Rob Cross. I think if somebody like, Rusty Rodriguez was in this group over, say, Jim Williams or Boris Kirchner, I think that's where we'd see the first upset, because you cannot, in the form that Wade has shown in the floor events, which, it's similar format, you just couldn't get on board. Kirchner on his day, of course, he's got the ability to do it, but you can't say that with any confidence whatsoever. And as Pieman said, Jim Williams has got a lot of ability, but he's shown absolutely nothing in these tournaments whatsoever. So, again, I think we're going with, on price and on form at the moment, Rob Cross to win the group and James Wade to come runner-up.
Yeah, on to Group D. Dimitri Vandenberg, the 8-11 favourite over Stephen Bunting at 11-4. Ryan Joyce 11-2, and Rowby John Rodriguez, the brother of Rusty, in at 16-1. In terms of competitiveness in the group betting so far, this is the closest in terms of Ryan Joyce. At 11-2 is the shortest third favourite we've come across so far. Dimitri, he'd have vote for a better than a World Match Play runner-up and one Players' Championship win this year, but he's still very much one to take seriously. This is a time of year when he comes alive, when it's back-to-back majors. Obviously, he's won a major himself before and was really, really very good in this tournament last year without winning or making the final. Bunting made a World Championship semi-final, and I thought he was back to his best, but his form hasn't quite continued since, particularly on the floor events. Bunting did make the semi-final for the World Grand Prix in October, but he's been inconsistent, would be the words for him. Should get through this group, though. Ozzy, Group D, what was you making of it?
I think it's got a Vandenberg win written all over it. As you say, he seems to thrive in these, in these big events. And, whilst he's not, got the win, it does bring out the best of him. In terms of competitiveness, I toyed on this because I think Ryan Joyce, it was in the last Super Series events over the last 3. He showed a bit of form in that. Got some big scalps, put some decent, performances in, good averages. And again, a player that, is becoming better, more accustomed to the bigger events as well. With the bullet, I think, it was a huge, shock, when he appeared in the World Championships. Again, I know you say about his form, but I don't think it's been disastrous. I don't think it's been like, James Wade sort of form. Bunting has been there. It's not as if, he's averaging chucking in the 85s and very low 90s. He's putting in some performances. I would probably go with Bunting to qualify in second place. With Joyce, not far off whatsoever. I don't give Rowby John Rodriguez any chance at all. I think in easy terms, he'll be the whipping boy of the group. And then I think for second place, it could well come down to the Joyce Bunting game. I think Vandenberg will just be scoring, will be too heavy. His experience will pay off. I will side with Bunting, but it wouldn't be a massive surprise to me if Joyce does pinch that second place. And it could come down to, from what Pieman said before about Adam Hunt going through on leg difference, that potentially a heavy win, over Rodriguez might weigh in the favour of one or the other, if it comes down to, as close as legs when it comes to qualifying.
Yeah. Group D, Pieman, any thoughts before we swiftly move on?
Nicely summarised by us there. Don't disagree with much of what you said at all, to be fair. Dimitri should win it. That's why he's odds on 4-6. I would be slightly tempted by Stephen Bunting's 3-1 to win the group. Mainly on recent form. If you look at the averages that they've both been producing over the last 3 months, Bunting's actually a point higher on the averages than Dimitri, which may surprise some people. But he is in reasonable nick recently. Maybe he hasn't been getting the results to justify that. But one thing I would say is I think Bunting's game matches up quite well against Dimitri Vandenberg. They both play at a decent pace. They're both quite heavy scoring, so they won't be intimidated by each other's 140s and 180s. And over a best of 5, Bunting, he's beaten bigger and better players than Dimitri Vandenberg in his career, so he won't fear that game. Dimitri's a worthy favourite, don't get me wrong. I'm just saying, if you were looking for someone at a bit of value, Bunting 3-1 could be of interest. Ryan Joyce was a player I was a big fan of, but he's just had a bit of a nothing year, really.
Agree.
Hanging on to his tour card at the moment rather than it looking like he's going to take that step forward. It is hard once you get up to that 40-32. You've got to be in that ton average quite regularly, and Joyce is like a low to mid-90s player. He's one of those where if you're not on your game, he'll clear you up. But you've got two players there that should be on their games. And as Oz says, Roby John, not as enthusiastic on him as Rusty Jake. He was excellent in the World Cup alongside Mensah, but I haven't really seen him do it on the telly in an individual event. So until he does that, can't get too enthusiastic.
Yeah, Joyce hasn't been seen on the TV since March. He's just not played well enough to qualify for most of the big events. Qualified on another one of the 8 players that qualified on the last day. That's the top half of the draw, and I think the top half is much more competitive and less attractive from a betting point of view than the bottom half. And the bottom half starts with Group E. Peter Wright is 4-7, bang out of form. I wouldn't back him at 4-7 to win this group if I found money on the floor. His last 2 TV tournaments, he hasn't won a game. The World Series, he was smashed 6-1 by Kim Ibretts. The European Championships went out in the first round 6-3 by Florian Hempel. He's just been no way near on the most recent floor events, despite winning 4 of the floor events earlier in this season. Obviously, he can turn it on for big tournaments, as we know. But yeah, the group format might help him to get into form. Might beat the likes of Dideka and Sharuk, who we'll come on to. But that leaves us with Clemens, the 11-4 second favourite. I think he's a bet. I think he's been solid on the floor, threatened in a variety of TV tournaments in the last couple of years, as Pieman will attest to. He's not really quite broke his personal ceiling, and he can fall apart sometimes when the finish line approaches in a big game. But he's got a favourable draw because Dideka's in there. He's the 71st ranked player. Again, another one that came through a final qualifier, having done very little recently. And Fallon Sherrock at 16-1 outsider. I can't really say much more about this group. Clemens is a bet. Pieman, I think we're back to you for Group E.
Yeah. I think you're probably right with Clemens. This is bizarre as someone who's a fan of Gabe Clemens. I can't get too enthusiastic about this. He's just been a little bit on and off for me in the last few months. Obviously, when he's on, I'm a big fan of his. He's got the game to do serious damage. I've said it a million times, like a broken record. But one day he's getting into the Players' Championship semis and finals. The next day he's out in the first round, averaging 80 something. He'll need to bring his best. When we saw him at the World Cup on telly, and I know that's a slightly different event, and the Germans are at home in a home crowd, it's hostile, whatever, but he just crumbles sometimes a little bit. And I'm thinking back to the World Championships where he had all them darts to beat Ratajski, and the big moments with a big crowd. He maybe just needs a little bit more experience in front of crowds for me to confidently say he's going to win this group. I definitely think it's a group to be taken advantage of because I think Peter Wright is bang out of form. And I think he's gone out of the last 2 or 3 TV majors in his first round. So that is a worrying trend for Peter Wright. And one that he can obviously put right. He's got the ability to, but we need to see it. Long odds on. Just throughout today, I've just been having a little think about whether I'm being too harsh on Mike De Decker because I really did dismiss him, as doing nothing results-wise this season. But I took a look, as you've probably gathered from my stat packs, I've been taking a look at the recent averages. And De Decker's average in the last 3 months is actually up at 95, 96, which is higher than both Clemens and virtually higher than Wright. So maybe we should be giving him a little bit more respect at the prices. I mean, he is a big price to... I haven't got the prices in front of me, Adam. I'm not sure if you do, but I think he was quite a sizable price for this group. Double figures, maybe?
It's 10 to 1. It's 10 to 1 to win this group.
Yeah, well,
Sherrick's 16.
Look, if we were looking at a big price for, someone who could ruffle a few feathers, because this is a group where there could be an upset, isn't there? Let's be honest. Oh, yeah. I mean, all 4 of them, you can make some kind of case for qualification or maybe even a group win. I mean, Fallon Sherrick in that women's series, she was playing over this kind of distance, first to 4 legs, first to 5 legs, whatever. And she was averaging up around a ton. But it's one thing doing it on the floor against other women when you're the big dog. And it's another thing doing it against Peter Wright in front of a crowd of 2,000. A crowd that will be behind her, no doubt. But it's just a totally different ball game. And yes, she's done it before at the Worlds, but there's been a bit of talk around her like, oh, Fallon's got a chance of getting out of this group. Well, that brings pressure with itself. She's not the underdog getting a free hit. People are giving her a chance of getting out of this group, and she's got to be at her best. She can do it, but she's got to be at her best. An outrageous outsider would be Mike De Decker to win this group 10 to 1, but I would not go crazy on it. And I think you're right. I think Clemens is probably the sensible option to take right on.
Yeah, that's the way. I think Wright's well worth taking on, but it's just, again, with a few of these groups, you might want to take on the favourite, but is there anything else in behind that can win the group? Ozzy, any thoughts on Group E?
Yes, I don't think Wright will qualify.
Oh, yeah.
I really don't. I just think his form stinks, and if there's ever a format for it to continue like it's this, you get off to a bad start, you're 3-0 down, you're looking, you need to win 5 legs in a row, and he's not done that. I mean, knowing this now, he'll completely turn up the books and absolutely romp his group. But I'm just looking at Gabe Clemens' form, and I thought he'd done a bit better actually in the recent Players' Championships. A best of the last 16. We got beat off, an informed Callum Ridds, but he was going to, he's got to the last 32. He actually lost 6-0 to Rusty Jake Rodriguez in one of the events as well. But in the bigger tournaments, I know what Pieman says about he crumbles. I don't see him crumbling in this group format because I think, he's going in. I think, if it's a semi-final, the knockout type of stuff, I think that's when, we see the pressure maybe get to him. But I think in this group stage, I think he's a horrendous draw for Peter Wright because Gabe Clemens on his, on form is very, very good. And I think 11 to 4 to win the group's a good bet. Very good, given the price, given the form of Peter Wright. If it wasn't Peter Wright and say it was James Wade, Clemens would be favourite in this group, without a doubt. And Wade is arguably probably in better form than Peter Wright. As for the runner-up, I agree with Pat. I actually think De Decker, he was a name that kept cropping up in the last Players' Championship events, heavy scores. And I was talking about form before, and he might take something from it that, he's been through. I know the floor events are different. Ian White, the prime example, unreal on the floor, doesn't always produce on the stage. But I just think I think they'll know Wright is there for the taking. And when Wright is not confident, he dicks around with his darts, he changes them. And someone like De Decker, who can score quite heavily, it is first to 5. He doesn't need to rattle off 3 sets to get the win. And I think this is, there's every chance that he could do this and qualify. As for Sherrick, look, she's got herself, plus the crowd that'll be behind her as well. I just wonder, how long that crowd will have an impact on, her opponents. I got it when she first came onto the scene. The atmosphere was raucous, but I think people are just going to get used to it. And Pieman was right. Performances in the women's championships events were excellent. They were outstanding. But she is the big fish, and she was throwing against some absolute trash as well. She's not throwing against any trash now, and I think the pressure's on her. To qualify, she might get an upset victory, but I don't see her winning enough games to qualify. I think it's a bit of a bad group for her, actually.
Right, so we're all taking Peter Wright on. So Peter Wright will win all 3 of his group games 5-0, 5-0, 5-0.
Absolutely.
But get it booked in. But can I just give one final word on Mike De Decker? To get here in his qualifier, he beat Adrian Lewis 5-2 in his penultimate game. And then he beat Kim Hybrex 5-3. And Kim Hybrecht's been in fantastic form. So he's beat 2 form players to get here. He had a couple of last 16s in the recent Players' Championship. So maybe, just maybe under the radar, things are starting to fall into place for him.
Yeah, he's 10-1 to win Group E, and with Clemens at 11-4. The first and second in Group E will play the first and second from Group F, and that is where Jose de Souza, last year's winner, is 11-10. I think the draw's been kind to him. I really do. In terms of not just this group, which is on paper the most competitive group on paper, but in terms of the Group E players, he's going to be taking on possibly Wright or Clemens or De Decker or Sherrick. I think that's more favourable for Jose. Humphries is in there 9-4, second favourite, and beaten finalist in the UK Open earlier this year. A player we put up as one to watch at the turn of the year. Mensah 7-2 qualifies through his World Cup of Darts final appearance alongside Rowby John. Wouldn't have qualified otherwise. He's not been good enough this year. And Matt Campbell, the Canadian, 16-1 outsider to win this group. This year's European Challenge Tour winner, having moved over from Canada. You just got to remember Matt Campbell as the narrow defeat in a cracking first round game at the World Championships against Scott Waits, where he came up very, very close to causing the upset there. Hasn't been seen much on TV, but I wouldn't underestimate Matt Campbell. I think he could easily, quite easily beat Mensah, Sudovic, and then anything can happen from there on in. We're over to Ozzy first on Group F.
Yeah, so I've got, I think Jose de Souza will qualify pretty comfortably, actually. He's defending his title. Not that he probably cares about that. He's still not made up for these miscounts that he does. But no, look, he's a player that, again, very, very good player. I'm actually staring away from that and probably looking at the second place. And I think Luke Humphries, it's probably a winnable group for him as well. Touch short, if anything, at 9-4 for me to back out right. In terms of winning it, but I think I've said it from when you said big Luke Humphries fan. Does seem to turn up in the bigger events actually as well. Good player, very, very good player. I was looking at Suljevic's record before. Has he not been playing recently in the Players' Championships? I've not seen him.
He missed a load in the particularly in the middle towards the end of the year of that season, if you like, mostly due to personal issues. But then he rocks up at the World Cup and makes the final.
Yeah.
I mean, from out of nowhere.
Yeah, he did play the last 7 Players' Championship events, but prior to that, it had been a very quiet season. In fact, I think he played in Players' Championship 12, and we didn't see him again until Players' Championship 24. So that was quite a big gap for Mensah.
So, right, yeah. So the stats I were looking at before were only up to 23. So when I was relaying some others, I've not looked at the updated ones. But yeah, so it's hard to back somebody who's had so much time away from it. I understand, he rocked up in the World Cup, but that was a bit of a one-off tournament. So I've no real confidence in Suljevic. I think, his form is a bit all over the place. Without a doubt, backing the reigning champion to qualify, along with Luke Humphries as well. But I can't put up a bet of Humphries to win the group. It's just a touch short for me. If we could have snuck it over into, like an 11, just over 3-1, I may have been having a nibble. But 9-4 is just a touch short.
Yeah, I agree with that. Pieman, any quick thoughts on Group F?
Yeah, I think Jose de Souza wins the group. And yeah, I know what I was meant about Luke Humphries. If he turns up, he can win 3 out of 3, no problem. He does seem to raise his game on the TV. Mensah, I don't think his form's as bad, judging off the last few Players' Championship events, as it may have looked. But yeah, there's just too many question marks over him, so I could skip him. Matt Campbell did deserve a mention. Yeah, fantastic
I
at the
like
World
him.
Championship. Really likable fella with a good power scoring game. Throws his darts in a no nonsense fashion. Gets on with it. Good scorer. Took out some lovely finishes in that game you mentioned against Wales. It was a real mini classic. That delighted to hear that he's got a tour card and he's going to be coming over for the next 2 years. I think he could do big things on the tour. I expect him to do well at the World Championships. Whoever he faces, he's a big banana skin. He's a banana skin here as well. But yeah, I'm not sure you could back him based on if you're looking at his averages from the last few months, he's going to have to step it up. He can step it up, but D'Souza, Humphreys, straight forecast looks the way forward.
It's not a bet, but I am going for Jose D'Souza not to win Group F. He might well finish second, but I don't think he will win Group F. That's my prediction. It's not a betting angle really. You can't bet to finish second, but yeah, I don't think he'll win Group F. But we're on to Group G, the very bottom section of the draw. This is where Van Gerwen comes into play. The winner of just one ranking event this year. Imagine that. And that was actually the penultimate Players' Championship of the whole season. There was once upon a time mentioned last night where, Players' Championship, Van Gerwen won about half of them one year around 2018, 2019, and he's only won one this year. He's ranked third in the world behind Price and the Snake. But it's not all bad. How it took him that long to win a floor event this year, I do not know. He's been in good form, making loads of semi-finals in the Players' Championship. Made the semi-final of his last two TV tournaments, a semi and a final, losing to the eventual winner, obviously, on both occasions. The signs of good form are there, but there were just a growing list of players who can beat MVG at their best. Jonny Clayton's recently been added to that list. And there's quite a few others. So as we keep saying, the gap between Van Gerwen and the rest, he's closing or close. I think he's got a dream draw, Van Gerwen, and also in this group is Joe Cullen, 13-5 to win the group. John Henderson, absolutely bang out of form, alongside the likes of Snake and Wade, who we've mentioned, made it to the Scotland World Cup team by accident for the second year running. Somehow managed to win it in a crazy week where Scotland took on Austria in the final. He's done absolutely nothing at all anywhere else this year, Henderson. And then Lisa Ashton's 40-1 to win this group. She's the only female player in the PDC Order of Merit, and she's number 84 on the list. Qualified through the PDC Women's Series, which Pieman has mentioned, where Ashton and Sherrick dominated, eliminated in the group stage on two previous appearances in the Grand Slam. So, we sound like a broken record, but to me, this very, very much looks like the two favourites in the group, Van Gerwen and Cullen, will waltz through. Pieman, what did you make of Group G? Straightforward or not?
Well, MVG should be winning it. That's something we've said a lot this year, and only one ranking title, and that's amazing to think that Michael Van Gerwen could get to November before winning a ranking title. Not like he's had a lot of time off either. It just, for one thing and another, it hasn't gone right for him. In the penultimate block of Players' Championships, he was getting last 16, and he was getting KO'd by just quite purely and simply form players. I think Dirk van Dijvenbode KO'd him with a ton average. Kim Huybrechts KO'd him with a ton average. And Ryan Searle KO'd him with a ton average. Three very informed players, as regular Players' Championship followers will be aware.
Two of which aren't even in this tournament, which
scandalous.
is a joke.
But that's another conversation. But
Cullen beat him as well, Pieman, I thought.
Yes, Cullen did beat him as well. And then if we go into the final three Players' Championships, how about this for form in fields of 128? One quarter-final, one semi-final, and one win. So if there's any doubts over Van Gerwen being in form or not, trust me, he is very much in form, and he will be the man to beat in this group. Joe Cullen had a hot start to the year, definitely had a mid-season dip, and he's definitely coming back to form. He can beat Van Gerwen over 5 legs, no doubt about it, but I wouldn't be rushing to back him to on his current form versus MVG's current form. John Henderson, fantastic. At least he got his World Cup win. I was delighted to see him doing well, but he could count himself lucky to be in this event, I think. Look, he's got a bit of a stage experience, is what I'll say, is going for him, and he'll have the crowd behind him, no doubt about that. He'll have to bring his very best darts to have a chance of getting out of this group. And as for Lisa Ashton, I was just reading earlier, she's lost 6 out of 6 games at the Grand Slam. But I'm really pulling for Lisa Ashton to win a game. I know you won't be, Smido, but I really would like to see Lisa win one because, look, all these question marks that get put in over women's darts and stuff, like, she can play with the best. She has got a very, very good game, Lisa Ashton, on her day. And while Sherrick's had her moment in the sun on TV, Ashton hasn't. She's not really shown her best darts on the TV stage. I hope she can at least show her best darts in one of these games. I think she can definitely give John Henderson problems, but it looks like a straightforward affair for Van Gerwen and Cullen.
I'll just say on Cullen, he has, I mean, we say this about many players, but he has got the game to go well in any given tournament. He just needs to be more consistent. His best run this year came in his last TV tournament, the European Championship. He made the semi-final, but I think he had a lucky draw there. He beat Mensur Suljovic, Borland and Ted Everts. That's not, to make a semi-final, that's not the most difficult route we've ever seen. Aussie Group G does look straightforward. Is that how you see it?
Yeah, I think it's probably the easiest group, to select from, really. Lisa Ashton has got absolutely no chance. I don't really agree for the fact that she's able to try and qualify through, the women's event when she's actually got a tour card as well. She should be qualifying for, she's good enough to get a tour card. She should be absolutely waltzing the women's events, and she's done that. The fact she's lost 6 out of 6 doesn't surprise me at all. She just rarely produces the goods when it comes to, the TV events. She'll get the odd floor win, but even then, they're few and far between. As for Big John Henderson, he's a nuisance, on form. We've seen him. Do you remember in the Premier League, he got a brilliant draw against Michael Van Gerwen, I think it was. Or was it a win? I forget.
No,
it was
he drew, but it's all crowd related.
Exactly. Yeah. But Van Gerwen is absolutely flying as Pieman. He is flying, and usually I'd happily take him on with someone like Cullen. I like Joe Cullen. I think he's a good player. Massively improved. Started the year off tremendously well. Probably peaking. Coming into the World Championships. Will certainly qualify. And I wouldn't really meant to go further. I just think, playing Van Gerwen in this, I guess there's the time to play him. It's over 5 legs. If you can pinch a couple early on. But yeah, overall qualifiers, Michael Van Gerwen and Joe Cullen. I actually think Michael Van Gerwen is generously priced at 1 to 2, given his form as well. This isn't a guy, we know he's won one ranking event, but who cares? Look at his form that coming into this, and he's crushing a lot of players.
Yeah, I mean, it's dangerous, smashing in at 1 to 2 shots in this short format, but I think he'll definitely qualify. I think he's got a dream draw. We'll come on to the next part of his draw in Group H.
Can I just say one thing on Joe Cullen that should be mentioned? He did lose his mum in October, and he said in his interview that his head has been all over the place over the summer months, and he hasn't really been practicing, and he couldn't give a damn if he went out in the first round, stuff like that. And in that tournament, after he lost his mum, he actually made the semi-final, and he said, I just feel like a weight has come off my shoulders now. And I think we do need to remember sometimes that for all the stats we assess and stuff, sometimes life can just get in the way. And we talk about Mensur having a long time out with personal issues and stuff. You never 100% know what's going on behind the scenes with a player. Yeah. Hopefully that brings about a resurgence in Joe's form.
Yeah, Group H is another one that's pretty open. The most open in terms of the longest pass favourite to win any of the 8 groups. And the second group alongside the Cross and Wade group, where the ranked player or the seeded player in Gary Anderson is not the favourite to win the group. That would fall to Michael Smith. Easy 11-8 to win this. Anderson 6-4. Barney's in there at 5-1. Another one that came through the final qualifying event. He is 79 in the world, Barney, but that's from his first year since returning, to be fair. I think he's probably unlikely to be a threat, and so is Joe Davis, who was the World Youth Championship runner-up. That was via the deciding leg, to be fair, to Bradley Brooks, but shouldn't be a qualifying criteria, in my opinion. Doesn't hold a PDC full tour card as yet. Yeah, Smith, I mean, 3 or 4 years ago, you'd have had Michael Smith as the 3rd or 4th favourite for every tournament, but not anymore. The likes of Dimitri Clayton, Aspinall, etc., have kicked on. Smith hasn't. He's been out the first round in his last 2 TV tournaments. Has won 2 titles on the floor this year, but has done very little on TV. I've not got a bet in this group, but given this group is pretty weak, it does bring the likes of Cullen in from Group G, who will play someone from Group H, hopefully in the knockout round. I'll come on to that when I give you my bets. But any thoughts on a pretty open Group H, Ozzy?
I've mulled a couple of things over on this one. I think young Joe Davis. I think it's more for an experience for him more than anything else. If he does qualify, I would probably dub it as the upset of the tournament more than anything. I think the only other person to qualify would be a bigger upset would be Lisa Ashton. In terms of, so I think he's there for the experience, but again, will probably struggle in all of his games. I know you say about Barney not being a threat, but I just wonder if, big tournament, will he thrive in it? Will he turn it on? Because, it's a relatively short format. Is he going to, produce, it's not impossible to think, is it? I can't remember from memory what his recent form is in the Players' Championship events.
Not great. He won the Players' Championship, the 3rd one of the season, which was only a matter of weeks after he got his tour card back. He's done very little since.
So it's difficult in terms of, will we look? I guess he's got he's got ability still, but for me, there's probably a reason why he dropped off and he retired in the first place, and he's decided to come back, which then he may push Gary Anderson and Michael Smith, but I think that's as good as it'll get. And there, I've left it at that too. And with Gary Anderson and Michael Smith, don't think Anderson played in the last 3 Plays events. He's very much picking and choosing as well what he wants to do.
Well, he promised us a big year, and he certainly hasn't delivered on that, has he?
Absolutely not. I think, is he still training with Ryan Searle? Because the one person who has produced a fairly big year is probably Ryan Searle. Yep. So maybe Anderson spoke in comments of his training partner more than anything. But I think in terms of group qualification, Anderson will be fine. Likewise, Michael Smith. I think I looked at the prices before. Michael Smith's 11-8. What price was Gary Anderson?
6-4 Anderson, 5-1 Barney. Name your price, the other lad.
Yeah, I've jotted down Michael Smith to win the group, but it's a bit of a coin flip, I think, between him and Gary Anderson. Smith, blows hot and cold, quite a few times. But again, race to 5. I'll probably shade to. I think Smith is probably a better punt at 11-8 compared to Gary Anderson. But I think those 2 guys will qualify. But I don't give them any chance, with them playing Van Gerwen and/or Cullen in the knockout stages. Yeah,
that's where my thoughts come in, Ozzy. And when we get onto the outright bets, I'll tell you exactly why. Pieman, just wrapping up on Group H.
Yeah, I thought Ozzy was going to go down the route I was, and he kind of talked himself out of it a little bit halfway through.
What, Barney?
Barney. I'm leaning towards Raymond van Barneveld for this group, 5-1.
Do you know what, Pieman? I had him jotted down as well.
Yeah.
And Smido writing him.
Honestly, you were giving him a big. You'll see when you watch his battle, I was nodding my head, and then it just turned a little bit. But hear me out, right? He come back, won his tour card. Let's not forget when he won that tour card at the start of the year, he played really good stuff. High 90s averages all over the place, and everyone was raving about Barney being back and all that. That was the headline of Q School, other than Mr. Baggish winning his card on the last day, of course, friend of the channel. And then Raymond van Barneveld won a Players' Championship event at the start of this year. You may remember in February. His 3rd Players' Championship back. He won the event in a full field of 128, playing some magical stuff. For whatever reason, it hasn't really happened for him this year. But I can guarantee you one thing.
That was 8 months ago.
I can guarantee you one thing. Raymond van Barneveld did not come back to darts for Players' Championship events. He come back to darts for big TV events.
A few quid.
He's got into this qualifier. He's got in through the qualifier, through the back door at the last minute. He was playing Brendan Dolan in the last game of his qualifier. Brendan Dolan missed 5 match starts to knock him out 5-3. Went 4-4. Dolan was throwing in the decider. He missed another match start, and Barney got in. Now, I'm not being, pie in the sky here, pardon the pun, but I do think sometimes the stars can align for someone, and I think Barney's very much one of these people where if he's in the right headspace, it makes such a world of difference for him. If I've seen him say himself, the final Players' Championship event, Players' Championship 30, he was in the last 32. He was playing Simon Whitlock. He was going out in 12, 11, 13 darts, whatever, 5-1 up, and he conspired to lose it 6-5, right? Now, if that's where Barney's season ends, he probably chucks the darts in again and retires. But he went up to that Grand Slam qualifier the next day, and by some hook or by crook, he's got himself in this tournament. He's now flying back over from the Netherlands. I mean, he's going to be in front of a big crowd. I think he could have a lot worse group than Michael Smith, as Ozzy says, hot and cold, and Gary Anderson, who I can't trust at all after this year that he's had. I think they're all much of a muchness, to be honest, in terms of trust. And I think the Barney factor, I'm not normally one for that kind of thing, but when one of them's 5-1 and the other two are around the 13-8 mark, you've got to go with the value, haven't you? So yeah, I will be putting up Barney to win this group.
Well, you've talked Ozzy back into Barney at 5-1.
Absolutely, he has.
I mean,
he has.
If you are going to have a bet in Group H, then fair enough. But I wouldn't back anyone in Group H outright because, as we've said, they're going to take on Cullen and MVG.
Sure, it comes with the caveat that it's a value play. I'm not saying Barneveld's the likeliest winner of the group. I'm saying if you look at the prices compared to their chances,
yeah, that's fair comment.
I think he's got to be the pick.
Yeah, right. We're on to the outright bets. I'll kick off. We've been on nearly an hour. Let's wrap it up under an hour. Rob Cross, without question, in the best form for at least 2 years, has gone under the radar with the bookies. He didn't play in the last TV tournament. Won the European Championship, as we said, and he's won on the floor recently as well. As an easy group, he's 11-10 to win the group. That's a bet. He's 20-1 to win the tournament. I think that's a bet. He's likely to face Bunting in the first knockout round. He'll be favourite for that. And then it's Price or Clayton somewhere down the line after that, where he's going to need to play very well to beat those boys. But yeah, 20-1 Rob Cross will be an official doubles and trebles selection. 11-10 for Group C, definitely worth a go. That's a bet for me for someone that's in form. Now I'm on to the more treacherous betting strategy of opposing those who I think are out of form with ones that are in the same group as them at bigger prices. Possibly with some early progress from nice draws before trading out at a smaller price. That's where the likes of Gabe Clemens comes into it. He's in Snake's group. I think Snake's terribly out of form. Big Gabe should have more than enough to make it out of that group. Even if the Snake returns to form, he should have enough to beat Mike Dedeker and Fallon Sharrock for me. He's 66-1 Clemens. I think that's a good bet. I think you can have a few quid on Clemens. You get through the group stage and then you start looking to possibly trade out. He's 11-4 to win the group. Both will be backed by me. We spent a little bit of time on group the final two groups, Group F and Group G and Group H. That's where Joe Cullen comes into play. He's 33-1. Now, if you look at Smith, Anderson and Cullen, who were both in the bottom quarter of the draw, they're all about 33-1. They're a similar price. Cullen's in the best form of that trio by some distance, so I'll be having a tickle on him. The only small bother in that is that Cullen is going to have to get past MVG again to make it to the latter stages, because they stay in the same section, if you see what I mean. So no matter if he finishes first or second in the group with MVG, Cullen has still got to be a fancy to win his knockout game against Anderson, Smith or Barney, as mentioned. So they're my three: Cross, Clemens, Cullen, all the C's. We'll go to Ozzy first with his outright picks.
Well, I'm a bit miffed actually, because I've also got Rob Cross and Joe Cullen as well.
Don't worry, Oz, it's a full house on Rob Cross. So.
Yeah, but I think Cross at 20-1 is an outstanding bet. Outstanding. The form he is in, it's just seemingly been ignored by the bookies more than anything. I mean, Peter Wright is 10-1 because his name is Peter Wright. Let's have it right. Rob Cross won a world championship. What was it, 3 years ago, or something like that, and has now returned to form. Won a big TV event as well. 20-1 is an outstanding price. I would probably say it's probably somewhat bet of the tournament. Really, he'll now go out in his group. Probably get an elbow injury, and yeah, that's him done for the year. But no, Cross is, at 20-1. I like the Cullen price. Bit of a killer, that he's got to get past Van Gerwen again, who we've said is massively in form. But if Cullen is in form as well, he can go, dart for dart with Michael Van Gerwen without a doubt. We've seen Cullen, beat Michael Van Gerwen as well. So I think at 33-1, that's probably one that you can back and it will get shortened. I think Cullen, for 33s is quite big as well. And then I've gone the opposite. I've not looked at someone like Gabe Clements at 66s and, to come in and then maybe cash out on them. I think just an outright win. I can't look away from Jonny Clayton at 11-2. I still think that's too big. Why is he not priced at 7-2? He is arguably the second best player, if not the best player in the world on results at the moment. That number 8 ranking is completely false. Completely false. And the fact is, we used to see Peter Wright all the time priced at, second favourite, third favourite. And whether that's because Jonny Clayton, doesn't have fat, silly hair and paintings on his head and, do dances on the stage. He just gets on with his business. He wins tournaments. And as I said at the start, he's in the form of his life. So again, for someone who is in the form of his life and are winning big tournaments on a regular basis, 11-2 is a price for me.
The only problem I've got with Cullen or Price, they've got to at some stage come past each other in the quarter-final.
Yeah,
that's the problem with them.
Yeah, but I think Clayton's probably got the wood on Gerwyn Price at the moment from memory. I think probably two of the last three, bigger TV events. I'm sure Jonny Clayton has won well.
You're right, but they've just got to come past each other in the quarter-final, and it doesn't give you that much of a chance because they're priced up like they're going to waltz the group anyway. It doesn't give you that much of a chance to trade out if you are that way inclined. Now,
of course,
I think Rob Cross can win the quarter-final and then be in the semi against one of them two, and then that's where you can get a bit clever with the price, and he might be 5-1 instead of 20-1. That was my thinking. It's just that's why I'm avoiding groups A and B for any outright picks because Clayton and Price are in there, and they're going to have to come past each other.
No, I understand that.
Pieman, you've got 2.5 minutes. Where are you going with the outright cash?
I like that you're giving me 2.5 minutes, anticipating I have a lot to say. I don't have a lot to say for once. I think it's straightforward. I think you take one in the outright market, and I think it's Rob Cross for all the reasons mentioned. I just think he is the standout. This is a notoriously hard event for outsiders to win. I love an outsider more than most, but let's be realistic about this. Jose de Sousa's win was as close to a surprise as you get in this tournament, really, because prior to that, we're looking at 2 wins for Gerwyn Price, a hat-trick for MVG, and then we're back into the Phil Taylor era of dominance. So it really is an event where cream rises to the top. There's a few reasons for that. One, you get an extra chance if you do lose a group game match to get yourself through the group. You can sort of ease your way into the tournament. And the format just extends as you go, which naturally favours the better, more experienced players. So while I expect we'll see some upsets, and I do expect a couple of underdogs to get towards the quarterfinal stage, I think when it all comes together, it's going to be those big names. And you're looking at a likely final 8. I think Rob Cross is one of the most likely players to get to the final 8 out of the entire tournament. So his price is just, it's too big compared to your other options. If I was going to pick one out of the 3, purely on form, it would be Jonny Clayton at the top. However, I think you make a valid point about Price and Clayton meeting each other. So maybe you could make an angle for Van Gerwen at 7-2 being a likely finalist in a weaker bottom half of the draw. So you could back MVG from a trade angle and look for Cross as your value in the top half of the draw. So I think, if you're wanting to build a book, maybe MVG and Cross. If you're just wanting a value outright selection, Rob Cross. And we will have some match fancies as the tournament goes on, which I will put up on our Twitter, and any group fancies I'll add to the description of this video.
Right, well, that'll wrap it up. I've only just realised I look like something from the Blair Witch Project. I mean, as you can tell, I'm outside this evening for various reasons. It's getting a bit cold now. It's 10:30, but if you've made it to this stage of tonight's live video, we salute you. Thank you very much. But plenty of darts action to come. Obviously, starting with the Grand Slam, but we've got all sorts of Players Championship finals. Obviously, going on to the Worlds later this year. So yeah, we're back full steam ahead on the darts. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks to Ozzy for coming along, special guest appearance, and Pieman twice in 2 days. I mean, unprecedented really for your recent form. So thanks a lot, everyone, and we'll leave it there and get the bets in the description.
Cheers all.